Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Today we're taking a look at autonomous vehicles. And wow, you guys sent in a ton of material.
Yeah, it's quite the collection.
It is. We've got legal analyses, we've got roundtable discussions, tech reports, even some public opinion surveys. It seems like everyone's excited about self-driving cars, but did anyone stop to think about what this means for the legal system?
It's a great question, and honestly, it's kind of like the Wild West out there right now. So much hype around the tech, but the laws are struggling to keep up. We're basically building the road as we drive on it, you know?
Yeah, bumpy ride for sure. And one of the biggest bumps has got to be figuring out liability. I mean, our sources all point to this challenge of who's responsible when a self-driving car crashes. If there's no driver, who's to blame? The manufacturer, the software developer.
That is the million-dollar question, and right now, no easy answer. Imagine this. A self-driving car makes a weird move, ends up causing an accident. Was it a software glitch, a sensor error, or was there something the person inside the car should have done? These aren't easy questions, and the courts are just starting to figure it all out.
It's a little unsettling to think about being in an accident and not even knowing who to hold accountable. And this isn't just hypothetical either. Our sources mentioned some real-world incidents, Uber, Tesla's autopilot system, some serious questions being raised there.
Absolutely. Each court case sets a precedent. It's all evolving so rapidly. This area of law is going to have a huge impact, not just on the tech itself, but on public safety, how the industry moves forward.
Sounds like we need some clear regulations to navigate this legal maze. But from what I'm seeing, it's a bit of a mess right now. State laws all over the place, but nothing solid at the federal level.
It's a problem globally, too. Different countries, different rules. It's a major roadblock for companies trying to launch these vehicles on a large scale. It's like a maze of conflicting rules. And regulations slows down innovation, makes it harder to get these benefits out to the public.
I see examples of this in the sources you sent, Waymo and Tesla, trying to roll out their cars across the U.S. Even something as basic as insurance requirements, they're all over the map. It's like playing a game where the rules change depending on where you're standing.
Exactly. In California, Waymo has to meet very specific insurance requirements for their autonomous vehicles, cross the state line into Colorado. Different story makes it almost impossible to operate on a national scale, even a statewide scale sometimes.
No wonder things are moving so slowly. It's got to be frustrating for these companies. They're ready to go, but the rules aren't?
I think it's safe to say they're eager to get their tech out there.
Right. So is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Any signs of progress?
Well, there are some interesting things happening. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, they're working on a voluntary national framework for oversight,
Okay.
trying to find that sweet spot between encouraging innovation and keeping people safe. Not an easy task.
It sounds like they're being cautious, which makes sense considering what's at stake. They're asking companies to hand over tons of data on how their vehicles perform before they loosen the reins for fully driverless cars. It's like, show me your homework before you go out and play.
Exactly, and that cautious approach is understandable. I mean, we're talking about machines making decisions that could have serious consequences, right? Life or death. So it's not just about the tech working, it's about building trust, making sure people feel okay with sharing the road with these vehicles.
Speaking of trust, one of the sources, a roundtable discussion with some experts, really hammered home the importance of public perception. People need to trust this technology, the hardware, the software, before they're going to hand over the wheel, so to speak.
You're absolutely right. We're asking people to put their lives in the hands of machines, and the technology is getting better all the time, but we've still got a ways to go, proving these systems are reliable, safe, capable of handling the real world.
It's a big ask. Millions of self-driving cars on the roads in just a few years. Billions being poured into autonomous drones and other vehicles. It's kind of mind-blowing.
The scale of this is really hard to grasp. It's not just about cars and drones. We're talking about automating entire systems, delivery trucks, buses, ships, maybe even airplanes. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about transportation. Huge opportunities, but also huge challenges.
It's both fascinating and a little bit scary. But before we get carried away with flying cars, let's take a closer look at the tech that's making all of this possible. The sources you sent dig into some of the key advancements in hardware and software. Some pretty impressive stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And it's changing so rapidly. Just a few years ago, self-driving cars seemed like science fiction. Now, AI sensors, computing power, it's becoming a reality.
It's amazing how fast things are moving. But it also makes you wonder about the reliability, the safety of these systems. If we're going to trust our lives to them, they need to be able to handle the real world. And that brings us to the core of what makes these vehicles tick. The hardware and the software.
Exactly. Let's start with the hardware. We're seeing incredible innovations in automotive chips and systems, especially in something called Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, or ADAS.
ADAS. Yeah, I've seen that a lot in these reports. They're crucial for making self-driving cars a reality. But for those of us who aren't engineers, break it down for me. What is ADAS and why is it so important?
Sure, think of ADAS as a set of features that help drivers and sometimes even take over certain driving tasks. Lane keeping, adaptive cruise control, automatic braking, blind spot detection, even parking assist. These systems use sensors, cameras, radar, lidar to see the environment and make decisions.
So it's like having a co-pilot who's always watching out for you.
Exactly, and as these systems get more sophisticated, they're leading us towards fully autonomous driving. Some vehicles now offer hands-free driving on highways, letting you relax while the car does the work.
That's both amazing and a little unnerving. I get the appeal of a car that can handle the highway, but I'm not sure I'm ready to let go of the wheel completely.
I think a lot of people feel that way. It's a big leap of faith, trusting a machine to drive you, especially when you think about what could happen if something goes wrong. So the reliability of the hardware, especially the sensors, is critical.
The sensors are basically the eyes and ears of the car. They have to accurately detect everything other cars, pedestrians, cyclists, even in bad weather, rain, snow, fog.
And not just detecting them, but understanding what they see, making split-second decisions based on that information. That's where the software comes in. Specifically, artificial intelligence AI. Think of it as the brain of the vehicle.
So we've got the eyes and ears, the brain. It's a pretty complex system. The idea of a machine making life or death decisions on the road is a lot to process.
It is a very complex and challenging problem, but the potential benefits of autonomous vehicles are so big that we need to explore this tech carefully, thoughtfully.
I agree, autonomous vehicles have the potential to revolutionize transportation. But like any new technology, there are risks and challenges. We have to develop these systems responsibly, with safety ethics and the needs of society in mind.
I completely agree. It's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we use it, how it affects our lives.
Well, we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive, from legal issues to regulations to the tech itself. But we're not done yet. We need to dig deeper into ethics, social impacts, the big picture consequences of this transformative technology. Welcome back to our deep dive into autonomous vehicles. So we've talked about the legal stuff, the tech stuff, but now I want to get into something that's been on my mind. How is this going to change our everyday lives? I mean, the sources you sent talk about the good stuff, fewer accidents, less traffic, but I'm curious to hear your take on all this.
Yeah, autonomous vehicles have the potential to really shake things up, change our cities, our lives. And one of the most exciting things is safety, right? Human error causes most accidents. And AVs that could take that human factor out of the equation, make things a whole lot safer.
That's a powerful argument. One of the reports you shared mentioned that nearly 94% of car crashes involve some kind of human mistake. That's huge. If AVs could even put a dent in that number, it would be a game changer.
Right. Even a small reduction would make a difference. Lives saved, injuries, prevented healthcare costs going down. And it's not just about safety. Think about commutes. Imagine a world where traffic flows smoothly. All the cars talking to each other, figuring out the best routes, the best speeds. No more stop and go.
That sounds amazing, especially for anyone who's ever been stuck in rush hour. No more road rage, no more wasted time, just a smooth, predictable commute. Almost too good to be true.
There are challenges, of course, but the potential is definitely there. And for people who can't drive themselves, people with disabilities, older adults, AVs could give them a level of freedom they haven't had before, really improve their quality of life.
That's a great point. AVs could open up a whole world of possibilities for so many people. But of course, there's always a flip side. One thing that keeps popping up in these sources is jobs. What happens to all the truck drivers, taxi drivers, delivery drivers if self-driving vehicles take over?
It's a valid concern, something we need to think about carefully. Policymakers, industry leaders need to be proactive, retraining programs, new jobs in new industries, making sure the benefits are shared fairly.
It's not a simple problem, that's for sure. But these conversations need to happen now, before AVs are everywhere. We have to be ready for the impact on society and try to minimize any negative consequences.
Absolutely. Technology can shape our world in good ways and bad ways. It's up to us to make sure we're steering it in the right direction.
You mentioned traffic earlier and how AVs could help with that. One report from a transportation big tank suggests AVs could cut congestion by half, 50%. That's incredible. How is that even possible?
Well, a few things. First, AVs are programmed to be better drivers than us. They don't speed tailgate or make sudden lane changes, all those things that cause traffic jams. Second, they can talk to each other wirelessly, share information about their speed, location, destination so they can work together, avoid bottlenecks.
So it's like a perfectly coordinated dance instead of everyone just doing their own thing.
Yeah. And if we start using AVs and shared fleets, the impact could be even bigger. Imagine instead of everyone owning a car, you just hail a self-driving taxi when you need it. Those taxis would be constantly on the move, picking up and dropping off passengers, always optimizing their routes. No more empty cars driving around.
That's fascinating. It could change everything about how we think about cars, maybe even free up all that space in our cities that's used for parking. All those parking garages and lots could be something else. Housing parks, whatever we need.
Right? It's a pretty big shift, and that's just one example of how AVs could reshape our cities. We could have dedicated lanes for them, smart traffic signals, even whole neighborhoods designed around shared mobility.
It sounds like a city built for people, not cars.
Exactly, that's the idea. But of course there are a lot of challenges. How do we make this all work?
I'm thinking about the technology, all the sensors, cameras, communication systems. It's a massive undertaking.
It is. And it's not just the tech, it's the infrastructure too. Smart traffic signals, high bandwidth communication networks, strong cybersecurity to make sure everything is reliable and safe.
Cybersecurity, yeah, that's a big one. As these systems get more complex, more interconnected, they're more vulnerable to hackers and cyber attacks. I read a report about hackers taking control of self-driving cars or messing with traffic flow. That's a scary thought.
It's a real risk, and we can't ignore it. Cybersecurity is going to be huge for the autonomous vehicle industry.
One of the sources you sent, a white paper from a cybersecurity firm, talks about needing a multi-layered approach to security. Not just the cars themselves, but the networks, the data centers, the software that runs it all.
It's a big challenge, but we have to get it right. The stakes are just too high.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential benefits: safety, less traffic, accessibility. We've touched on the challenges: jobs, cybersecurity. But now I want to get a little more philosophical. How could widespread adoption of AVs change our relationship with cars, with driving?
That's a good question. On a practical level, I think we'll see less car ownership. People might just summon a self-driving vehicle when they need one instead of owning one that sits around most of the time. That could free up space in cities, reduce traffic, even change how we design our homes and neighborhoods.
That's a big change, but I can see it happening, especially with younger generations. They're already used to ride-sharing and on-demand services. But what about the emotional side of driving? For a lot of people, driving is more than just getting from A to B. It's freedom, independence, even adventure. Will those feelings go away?
It's hard to know for sure. Maybe driving will become more of a hobby, something you do for fun on a weekend drive, not for your daily commute. Or maybe we'll invent new ways to get around that give us those feelings of freedom and adventure.
Interesting. Maybe we'll see people cycling more, walking more, even horseback riding. Who knows? Or maybe we'll come up with something totally new, something we haven't even thought of yet.
The possibilities are endless. That's what makes this such an exciting time. We're at the beginning of a huge change in transportation, and it's going to be amazing to see what happens.
Well, in the second part of our deep dive, we've talked about how AVs could change our cities, our lives, even how we think about transportation. But there's still more to explore. In the final part, we'll look at the bigger implications, the ethics, the long-term consequences. All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive on autonomous vehicles. We've covered a lot of ground, the legal stuff, the tech, the good and the bad. But now I want to zoom out, look at the big picture. Some of the sources you sent hint at how AVs could really reshape our cities, even society as a whole. That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, it's not just about the cars themselves. It's about changing the whole system. How we get around. Imagine cities built around these shared fleets of autonomous vehicles. No need to own a car. You just grab one when you need it.
So basically, we get rid of parking lots.
Exactly. Think about all that space we could reclaim: parking garages, surface lots. They could become parks housing community spaces, whatever we need.
That's a pretty radical idea. I can see how urban planners would love it, and environmentalists. But what about people who like to drive? Would they lose out?
It's a good question. Think about what happened with horses. When cars came along, people stopped needing horses for transportation, so horseback riding became more of a hobby. Maybe driving will be like that, something you do for fun, not because you have to.
Sunday drives, but no more commuting in rush hour. I could get used to that. But wouldn't we need to change everything to make this work? Our roads, our infrastructure.
Absolutely. It's a huge undertaking. We'd have to rethink how we build our cities, our energy grids, our whole approach to transportation. Huge investments, coordination across all kinds of sectors. But the potential payoff is huge too.
One of the sources you sent a report from some futurists that describes these interconnected transportation systems, AVs, working together with public transit, bikes, pedestrian walkways. It sounds amazing, but also really complicated.
It is. It would require a lot of planning collaboration. But think about the benefits. Less traffic, cleaner air, safer streets, more livable cities. It's worth aiming for.
It's a great vision, but I keep thinking about the digital divide. What about people who can't afford the tech or don't have reliable internet? Would they get left behind?
That's a really important point. We have to make sure these technologies are accessible to everyone, no matter their income age or how comfortable they are with technology. Otherwise, we end up with a system that only benefits certain people, and that's not what we want.
Yeah, it's like any big change. We have to be careful about unintended consequences. But I'm still drawn to this idea of technology making our lives better, making our cities better.
It's a powerful vision, and it's possible if we work together and plan carefully.
So we've talked about a lot in this deep dive. The laws, the technology, the good, the bad, the challenges. But as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We focused on the concrete stuff, but there's more to it than that. What about the things we can't measure?
Yeah, technology isn't just about the gadgets and gizmos. It's about how we use it, how it changes us, how it affects our values.
Exactly. So as we enter this new era of transportation, we should ask ourselves, what kind of future do we want to build with this technology? What role do we want autonomous vehicles to play in our lives, our communities, our world? Those are questions for all of us to consider. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Keep those wheels turning.